Hello, I am the Script Doctor, and welcome to the channel. Picard is almost over. After this episode, only 2 left, and sadly, from this season, nothing much has really happened. I guess there is something of a silver lining to it. Picard has prepared me so much so in my endurance that when I do eventually cover Star Trek Discovery Season 3, I should be able to persevere. But Episode 8, written by Michael Chabon, is the first bottle episode of this series where all the story's threads come together via direct and convoluted exposition. Please be advised that this review will contain spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, please feel free to return to my review after having seen the episode. In this week's flashback, we head back to 14 years ago. Somewhere in the galaxy, there are 8 stars close together that surround a lone planet from a lost civilization so old that they have no name. It is an astrological phenomenon. On this planet is a glowing railing that, when touched, psychically informs the user of a warning regarding synthetic life. It is a strange experience to be both relieved and disappointed at the same time. This episode thankfully doesn't reveal that the Romulans created the Borg, but rather that the Romulans found this message from long ago and formed this subsect to prevent such a disaster. After touching this railing, we get a peek into the frustrations of the writers of Star Trek Picard. While it is dramatic visually, narratively it doesn't make sense. Why would the beings that created this warning convey such information in a way that would drive potential viewers to madness or suicide? Why reduce the amount of people that could retain this warning, especially if the species went to all the effort to make sure the warning could be discovered? An idea not explored is that we know the Zhat Vash find the synthetics dangerous because of this admonition, but we are not given a reason as to why they are dangerous. We are left to fill in the gap by drawing on other science fiction stories with similar premise, such as Westworld, The Terminator, Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, and Colossus the Forbin Project, just to name a few. There is a good idea within this opening. A dead civilization leaves a warning for new life to not repeat the mistake they made. The Zhat Vash were formed to save organic life from destruction at the hands of synthetic life. How they go about this is rather nefarious, playing with the question, does the ends justify the means? But it brings with it other questions. If the Romulans found this warning first, why not share it with the rest of the galaxy, knowing what is at stake? Why not investigate this planet and try to discover more about the people that created the warning message and the system where it lies? Instead of going down the curious path that this idea presents, we see Commodore O recruit a new set of Zhat Vash where Narissa and Ramda the Romulan survive the admonition and begin their plans with an attack on Mars. Through a monologue, Narissa tells us that Ramda is her aunt, who raised her and Narek after their parents died. We get no useful information from this scene, but what is discovered is that Narissa is ready to abandon the cube. It raises questions as to why the Romulans were here in the first place. Was this all an elaborate ploy to get Soji? Capture a Borg cube and set up a reclamation program because they knew it would draw a synthetic to their project that they could exploit? If that's the case, there are a lot of variables in that plan that need to land just right in order for that goal to be achieved. Even though Narissa tells us that she's going to leave the cube, she contacts one of her agents to find out if Elnor has been found. What does that matter? If the Romulans are planning to abandon the cube, why care about Elnor at all? Why not just leave and let him die on the cube alone? Elnor is in hiding. He's not striking various parts of the cube, killing Zhat Vash. He's hiding out in Hugh's office. Just lock him in, barricade the door, and take off in your ships. Again, you don't want to make things easier for your hero. And while I hardly call Elnor a hero, the writers seem to think he is. Instead of trapping him on the cube, they have the Zhat Vash search for him so we can get some action set pieces and 7 of 9 coming to the rescue instead of putting him in a dire situation where he would have to survive on an empty cube with no means of escape. Elnor's reaction is to hug 7 of 9 like a frightened child. So much for him being a fierce warrior feared by the Tal Shiar. After the opening credits, we return to the La Serena, where Rios is in a mild state of shock after seeing Soji. He agrees to follow the final orders of Picard and then tells him he's done with the mission. Picard's new plan with Soji, now that he's rescued her from the Romulans, is to return her to her home. For some reason he can't do it without support, and so requests Rios to open a transmission to Starfleet Command and set course for Deep Space 12. But Raffi is having none of this. She draws a phaser and challenges Picard's actions because Jurati is discovered to be the traitor, and this whole mission of Picard's is based on a cloned neuron. It's an odd scene because it is designed to get Picard to learn that Jurati is the traitor. The premise Raffi is running with is that Soji could also be a traitor because Jurati is a traitor. The common thread between these two characters is Picard bringing each of them in on this mission. Except Soji is the mission, so why Raffi is being all angry and paranoid to Soji doesn't line up with the mission Picard presented. It is just another contrivance to get Picard to discover that Jurati killed Maddox. The EMH briefs Picard on the details, and I am certain I am not the only one wondering why the hell this scene wasn't shown 2 episodes ago. We get the first stupid exchange of the episode when the EMH tells the crew that Jurati turned off the system repairing Maddox's injury, and Picard tries to justify it as
he was in distress.
Really? In what rational context does a distressed person choose to kill another person that they love? Picard informs Admiral Hubris of his adventure thus far and requests a squadron to assist with defending Soji's home planet from the Zhat Vash. Hubris agrees, but only after telling Picard to
shut the f*** up.
Raffi returns to the bridge with plans to call out Rios on his poor judgment about Jurati when she discovers that it is not Rios but the emergency navigation hologram named Enoch. Rios has locked himself in his cabin and activated all of the holograms to run the ship as they head to Deep Space 12. For some reason, Enoch has private information about Rios. We don't know how he got such information, but he has it so the writers can move the plot forward. Apparently, Rios has come in contact with Soji before, but she was named Jana. It looks like Soji is a triplet, but Raffi doesn't follow this line of questioning to a logical conclusion. She drops it and asks about a symbol she found while hacking the cube that the Romulans have been drawing over and over again. Enoch refers to it as an octenary, a system with 8 stars. My interest is now piqued, as this is the first time in Star Trek Picard we're seeing something close to real science. Enoch references New Scorpii, a real septuple or septenary system, one of 2 we currently know about in the 21st century, the other being AR Cassiopeia. These 2 systems have 7 stars where they orbit each other, usually in pairs or pair groups. There is no record of a star system with 8 stars except in ancient Romulan star charts. Raffi deduces that a conclave of 8, which is something we haven't really been informed about before, may not be in regards to people but a location. This starts the ball rolling for Raffi to put together what the Zhat Vash are doing and why they're doing it. On the cube, Seven and Elnor enter the Queen cell where Seven reactivates the cube planning to steal it from the Romulans. So, Seven can close the door to the Queen cell, but Hugh can't, huh? Ugh. Narissa and her team get wind of this and plan to jettison the remaining Borg into space while she takes care of the ex-Borg drones recovered. Back on the ship, Picard and Soji eat breakfast where Soji learns about Data from Picard and Soji tells Picard that Data loved him. And what was the point of this? To inform us of a character anyone could easily learn about from watching The Next Generation? It doesn't tell us anything about Soji. It doesn't add anything to Picard. We are stuck watching a scene that does nothing but break up Raffi talking to various holograms on the ship. The next one she speaks to is the engineering hologram named Ian. The scene starts with repetitious information of Rios still in his cabin. Why Raffi isn't going there at this moment is beyond me, but we finish off the scene with Ian telling Raffi that if anyone were to make an octenary star system, it would be so they could show off. From that idea, Raffi speculates that it would be to draw attention to a warning. It's a leap, but not implausible. If anything, she should be starting out by saying that it should tempt the curious, that it would most likely have a message or be a trap. Those 2 ideas should come alongside the idea of a warning. This is followed by some scene about Raffi not having access to alcohol on the ship and the hospitality program suggesting that she talked to Rios about his grief. But Rios, drinking alone in his cabin, tells Raffi to piss off when she comes by to talk. She gathers the 5 holograms in Picard's chateau and tries to chip away at what is bugging Rios, which doesn't quite appear to relate to Raffi's other interest in the Conclave of 8, so why she's investigating this path is confusing. What this entire scene manages to reveal is that something bad happened on Rios' old ship, the Ibn Majid.
What happened on the Ibn Majid?
Hey, Sefu's a piping and off you off the fang.
It's not even a language.
Picard is present when Jurati wakes, and she admits all of her wrongdoings, and that it was at the behest of Commodore O, and that she will turn herself over to the authorities for her crimes. She monologues about how O put the admonition in her head. Before that moment she never believed in hell, but now she does, and because of that she contemplates suicide every day. Which is the second really dumb thing that a character says in this episode. How does that logic work? Hell is for the afterlife, specifically those that have committed a sin, like murder. Would it not be in her best interest to run from the prospect of hell instead of delivering herself to the gates via suicide? Wouldn't those fearing hell wish to stay alive longer? We next learn that the vision that tempts Girardi with suicide is not one experienced by O, but a memory or log of something that occurred thousands of centuries ago. Girardi claims that they're at a threshold of synthetic life, and once that threshold is crossed, hell will come again. And apparently Soji is this threshold. Raffi breaks into Rios' cabin as he listens to Billie Holiday's Solitude on a record player. Raffi refers to it as a Walkman, the third dumb thing spoken in this episode. Chabon makes Raffi so stupid as to call a record player, a device that is not mobile with an individual, a Walkman. Now if she called it a stereo, or a boombox, or a radio, or another audio device that is typically seen stationary, it would fit in line with the confusion. Anyway, this scene is intercut with Girardi talking with Soji. What we learn is that Rios met a Soji model android named Jaina, who is with a male android named Beautiful Flower. Really, Chabon? You're going to make the synths more crazy than the hippies from The Way to Eden?
Oh, that's now. That's real now.
To think, one of those hippies grew up, pulled his head out of his ass, and decided to join the military. What we learn in this scene is that Rios' captain was ordered to kill Beautiful Flower and Jaina, and after a stern talking to by Rios, ended up committing suicide. Rios was ordered to hide all records of the contact or have his ship destroyed by Starfleet. Everything about this story is completely foreign to Star Trek and Starfleet. What captain would obey orders to destroy members of another species that they just established first contact? What other captains would blindly destroy a fellow ship and crew without full details as to why? Even then, they would investigate the targeted ship and demand answers as to why Starfleet is ordering their destruction. But it doesn't matter anymore because it's in the past and we're all here wondering what the hell are the odds that Rios would encounter another person that looks identical to Soji, who he now learns was a synth all along. There is no reason to do this. A reason isn't even introduced later to justify Rios knowing that there are others like Soji. It is supposed to be a dramatic scene, but I can't help but ask where the hell the light is coming from in this room. He's in space. Is his cabin also a holographic recreation like Picard's chateau? Why is there a giant window with sunlight beaming through? And if it's not a holographic room, shouldn't there be stars whipping by since they are traveling at warp? The only thing consistent in this show is how it's incompetently handled. The fourth dumbest exchange of dialogue occurs between Girardi and Soji, where Soji says she'll never give Girardi the opportunity to kill her, because that's how all murder happens. The victims just give the murderer the opportunity to end their lives. It gets worse because Girardi's response is now that she's met Soji, she won't do it, because that's all she needs to not commit murder. Oh wait, that doesn't matter because she was boning Maddox before he vanished and she was perfectly capable of killing him, so for Girardi, knowing doesn't mean squat. Speaking of murder, on the Borg cube, Narissa is killing off the liberated Borg. Eleanor notices the lights vanishing from the display and 7 of 9 decides to connect to the cube via half-assed special effects to activate the Borg that are in stasis. But it is all for nothing because the Romulans have vented the Borg into space. 7 screams in agony suggesting that these Borg have died, but they're just floating in space, and Star Trek First Contact has shown us that the Borg can survive in those conditions. So since 7 is in control of the cube, why doesn't she use the transporter to beam those Borg back on the cube and start taking out Romulans? Instead of following this scene out logically, we return to the ship with another huge exposition dump. Raffi has somehow figured out that an alien species moved 8 suns together and put a planet in the middle that had a message regarding synthetic life. A warning that if anyone were to create artificial life forms, they would evolve and bring destruction. They liken it to the light speed barrier. If a species discovers warp, a first contact will be made, but in this area, the first contact won't be one to welcome a species into a larger galaxy, but rather they face obliteration. So those are the stakes. If Soji or others like her manage to evolve, that evolution will wipe out life in the galaxy. Sounds an awful lot like the video game Mass Effect. We also discover that there is a planet of synthetic life forms, sort of playing off of Maddox's desire to create a race of androids. Raffi then reveals the sinister plan of the Zhat Vash. Once it was learned that Data existed, O entered Starfleet and rose to the ranks of head of security so she could put a stop to further development of androids by staging the attack on Mars and getting a Federation-wide ban on the research. Raffi then recounts Rios' last days aboard the Ibn Majid, where Soji is confused as to why she knows of Beautiful Flower and Jaina. She asks how, and Rios responds with the 5th example of dumb dialogue.
How do I know that?
The same way I know you like to dip French fries in peppermint ice cream.
Those two lines don't correlate. Rios knowing that she likes peppermint and french fries together does not have the same reasoning as to how Soji knows anything about Beautiful Flower or Jaina. Soji never met Beautiful Flower or Jaina because they were destroyed 9 years ago and Soji is apparently only 3 years old. Maybe they'll retcon that in the next episode, but for now it doesn't line up. Rios' line should be, I guessed you'd like this food because your sister liked it 9 years ago. Chabon has tried to be clever 5 times in this episode, and like a poor marksman he keeps missing the target. With this revelation, Soji goes to the bridge and turns on the engines. Wait, they were stopped? Weren't they supposed to be en route to Deep Space 12? What is with this show? They can't have them drop out of warp and Soji set a new heading? The ship has to have been stopped in space for this entire sequence? We're being told of urgency but not seeing it acted out by the crew. It's ridiculous. She doesn't take over the ship long because Rios has a failsafe based off a lullaby his mother sang him. Picard suggests they let Soji take the lead and they warp off to the Borg transwarp conduit that will take them to Soji's home planet. Because, of course, she knows about a Borg transwarp conduit. The Romulans have also discovered Soji's home planet and regroup at the cube to depart. Narissa gets ambushed by ex-Borg but manages to transport away as they pile onto her. Or maybe they absorb her through energy. It's a little iffy at this point, but we'll find out next episode if she's back or not. 7 of 9 releases her control of the cube and we're back on the La Serena as it approaches the transwarp conduit. Rios and Picard reminisce about what Starfleet used to be, and how it's no longer what it is, but that they can write the future for themselves and make it hopeful again. It's kind of nice, but it's too little too late. This should have been the guiding principle of the series from the start. Every action of Picard should have been dictated by this principle, and every pushback he faced should have been challenged by Picard. Soji interrupts Picard's hopeful speech to announce their arrival to the conduit entry point. She taps on the screen like a bad grade school mime and reveals the compass Kester gave her last episode. For some reason it points north towards the conduit. I don't know how that is possible as a compass responds to the magnetic field of a planet. The ship may have artificial gravity but doesn't have 2 points of a magnetic pole. The darn device, broken or not, shouldn't be able to point to anything specifically. It's the 6th dumbest idea in this episode. That's one dumb thing every 8 minutes. After that, I need to go back and fix the opening credits. The episode ends with them entering the conduit followed by Narek's ship. Somehow he's been able to still track them.
Bum bum bum.
And we're left with more questions than what we had going in. The newest one is in regards to the admonition. Why is this world only found by the Zhat Vash and not anyone else? To seek out strange new worlds is a part of Starfleet's doctrine. How is it no one else has found this unique star system or even inquired about it? Is it deep within Romulan space and therefore unreachable? Have the Romulans found a way to disguise it? And if so, how? And why? Why conceal this information given the consequences? It seems that if a society discovers something that could threaten their existence, they'd want to share it as widely as possible to avoid a devastating outcome. Heck, the main reason I am doing these reviews is so others who watch won't suffer alone, and maybe, just maybe, I can help future creatives avoid the same mistakes that are being made in Star Trek Picard. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have anything to add to this episode, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and never forget, it all starts with the script.